Yeah, they can be. We've had some close ones.
They were just not.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's 18 layers of work that can't run, then.
They were still, yeah, basically, it was off.
I was wondering, there was one snowstorm that like they legit had to like bring the tractors in and like biggest like to the neighborhood and it couldn't live in the. Another one's greater than that.
Fascinating waters around the country.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And usually that brings out because it's
Yeah.
ballot measures, you know, stuff that they have changes to. School. Bond issue, most of the elections, and it usually drives the vote count up in short times, so that's not bad. 3 months. Not so.
It's fascinating. Fascinating process. It's interesting to see a lot of the stuff that's developed in the last 10 years around the voting. COVID was bad because there's things that went kind of off road. People don't realize how much the voting was changed.
I'm also.
Yeah.
I don't like
All there.
I think it was interesting.
I like to show up.
Yeah. One of the things that I think was fascinating was the first election that happened after the COVID started was in Ohio in April. Yeah, 2020, and there was this very local election area, and it canceled in person.
Wow, that's.
And they everyone did ban it. To have a signature verified. And then when he got off. Good mark. They realized. 10,000 people in the city that matching the signatures was more of a time consuming task.
Got to go up, take some around the neighborhood.
They're just headed out, so.
Couldn't take us months.
My son is there.
So.
How are you? Good. Good. I'm looking much better than this. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, time is 6:30, so could have everybody grab their seats. We'll go ahead and open up public comment. Views expressed by individuals during public comment do not necessarily reflect the views of the city of Fremont, have not been verified for accuracy by the city. As a reminder, city council and staff are not permitted to respond to comments or questions during the public comment period in accordance with Fremont Municipal Code Section 2-103. Public comments will be limited. We'll be able to do 5 minutes per person, shall not contain topics included on this evening's agenda. Again, this is open public comment. Again, you'll have up to 5 minutes to speak on anything that's not on the agenda. If you are here and wish to speak, please sign in. There's also comment cards in the back. We'll go ahead and start with Tim Howard. Please speak your name and address.
My name is Tim Howard and I live at 2665 Park Place Drive here in Fremont. To the council, I've been a Fremont resident for almost 50 years, pretty much all my life, and have never before spoken to this council. However, events over the last year that have transpired inside and outside of this room have led me to the point where, as a citizen of Fremont, I really believe I need to speak up. In the time I have allotted, I intend to make 4 brief points, all of which relate to the actions of our council president, Mark Jensen. Mark's use of profanity towards members of our community while acting in his role as city council president is deplorable, insulting, and absolutely unacceptable. The leaders of this city should be held to a higher standard of conduct than we have seen from our current president. Additionally, Mark has violated meeting rules by raising his voice at individuals in city council meetings and speaking at times he is prohibited from doing so, and even ignoring warnings from our mayor. Equally disturbing to me is that Mark seems to show absolutely no remorse for any of these actions. Rather than offering a humble, heartfelt apology to those he has bullied and insulted, he has instead stiffened his back and thumbed his nose at those who have chosen to call him out for his behavior. It may be mere coincidence, but I also find it troubling that Mark's most violent outbursts have been directed at women in our community. Secondly, it appears to me that a majority of this council have decided to turn a blind eye to this boorish behavior and have adopted a que sera, sera, whatever will be attitude towards these matters. In the September 28th edition of the Fremont Tribune, one of the members of this council defended Mark with the following statement: "Mark is a rebel. Sometimes people just have a hard time expressing themselves. You have to learn to deal with people." Really? Really? This is the kind of reaction we get from this chamber? Maybe I'm a little old-fashioned, but I would propose that being able to deal diplomatically with those you disagree with should be a prerequisite for those who run for this office, and even more so for those who serve as president. In my opinion, and the opinion of many others in this community, that the majority of members of this council need to stand up to the bullying of the public and stop defending, excusing, or enabling Mark's behavior. I draw your attention right now to the bottom of page 3 in tonight's agenda, where the following audience participant rules of conduct are listed. Number 6, profanity or raised voice is not permitted. Number 7, applause, booing, or other indications of support or displeasure with the speaker are not permitted. Number 8, any person violating these rules may be removed from the council chambers. Mark has violated both of these rules, was never removed from the city council chambers, and has never been disciplined for his actions. How can this council hold the public to these standards and not enforce them within their own body? You should be ashamed of yourself. I would offer to you that if this council continues to do nothing about these actions by Mark, then you have no right to expect that kind of behavior from the public. It is my opinion that the absolute minimum response that should be taken by this body is to censure Mark for his actions. However, I believe it is a far more appropriate response for the council to remove Mark as president and replace him with someone who has the maturity, self-control, and character required by this position. Third, to those of you on this council who have tried unsuccessfully to rectify this problem, I applaud you. Please continue in your efforts to keep this a transparent, civil, and accountable body. There are many watching you and many that are appreciative of your attempts to do the right things in this regard. Finally, to the city's legal counsel, there's absolutely no reason that the recent complaint against Mark should not be made available to the public. Transparency and accountability in government are an important and critical part of our democracy, and attempting to hide information from the public, failing to make it public, and failing to act upon valid complaints is an insult to the democratic process. Thank you for your time and attention. It is my hope that the council addresses this issue promptly, and that this is the one and only time that I feel the need to speak to the city council.
Dylan Martinez.
I gotta fix this real quick. Looks like the, yeah. Needs to be flipped the other way, otherwise it kind of blocks the camera.
No, his paper was there, that's why it was blocked, so you can put it back the way it was.
Well, the angle is like right here, so when I'm holding my paper, I can't rest right.
Okay, well, I guess you're
Starting the timer, so perfect. Hello, everyone. Happy Halloween. What's scarier than ghouls and goblins? More devious than devils or demons? It's a wolf in sheep's clothing, And like some meddling kids, I've come to pull off some masks. My name is Dylan Martinez, and I'm back with part 2. I'll be speaking quickly and clearly, so if you miss anything, I invite you to review these recordings later on YouTube. First, I'd like to make a clarification. Last month, I spoke of Debbie Campbell, our current assessor. I made a typographical error while creating my speech. Her name is Debbie Churchill. And while I understand that the assessor is out of your jurisdiction, I'm speaking on the subject because it relates back to ethics in the public sector. Returning back to the topic of nepotism, John Rolfs is a prime example, who at the time was DCHS board president and had given Tamara Reed, the position of DCHS director. Ms. Reed herself admitted in a 3 News Now article in May of 2020 that she had no prior animal experience and that it was through her former colleague at First State Bank, Mr. Rolfs, that she got the job as director. Fast forward today, and Mr. Rolfs returned to work for First State Bank, otherwise known as Riverbank, as Senior Vice President of Lending. While DCHS and Riverbank may be private entities, the DCHS is an entity that we have entered into public agreement with. As such, I think the fallout from the previous director, Ms. Reed, speaks for itself on the importance of why we must be ethically conscientious with whom we enter into agreements with by evaluating how they conduct their business. Pivoting beyond the topic of nepotism, we move to the infamous 2021 Nebraska Public Audit, which appears to be nothing short but textbook embezzlement. Among many questionable discoveries, a single local official or council person marked employee number 1 was making $340,000 a year. $340,000 a year in a town of 27,000 people whose individual median income is less than $30,000. That $340,000 is not a far cry from the $400,000 a year that our own president of the United States earns. Compare that to the responsibilities of a state employed judge who earns $179,000 a year. I firmly believe that employee number 1 and employee number 2 notated in this audit were grossly overpaid for their responsibilities, draining the public of their tax-paying dollars in order to line their own pockets. In addition to these egregious salaries, the illegal under-the-table backroom deals of 6-month severance equal to half their salary includes benefits that we paid these employees for nothing in return, highlights the systemic corruption that exists within the public sector of our city. While it is not clear if this employee number 1 was Brian Newton earning a dual position totaling $340,000 a year, I for one would very much like to see our response in the resolution of this audit as it ended waiting for the city's response to these matters. While on this topic, I would like to give special thanks to Glenn Ellis for whistleblowing on this audit among numerous other derelictions of duty across the county back in November of 21 via Facebook. It takes a great deal of integrity to make a stand against corruption, and I want you to know it has not gone unnoticed. It was that post that you made that inspired me to research more. And like a pebble in the pond, the ripples have led me here to speak before you all today. Now, that's just the tip of the squandered spending iceberg. $2 million spent out of the general fund for a new airport terminal that we didn't need when we could have installed a viaduct bypass on 23rd Street west of Somers for emergency responders. $6 million spent avoiding paying the state back. Bet that would have been nice to fund repairs in Fremont from the flood. Nearly another $1 million spent on Tech Park, which still has yet to come to fruition. All the while, we have a fire department that struggles to get proper funding. For too long, people abuse their public positions for personal gain. Let's not forget about Craig Harbaugh, who used his past position in Dodge County Sheriff to generate an $11 million Ponzi scheme, which was known as one of the largest in U.S. history, only to die of a heart attack before sentencing. Our previous attorney, Oliver Glass, whose DUIs should have been the first call to action for his removal. Mr. Glass used his position as attorney along with 2 other people to access police database for personal information in order to stalk his ex-wife and her boyfriend. Then there was the longtime Judge Vampola, who recently resigned before paying the piper for his wrongdoing. Mr. Vampola used his position to abuse the system for his meth-addicted side piece by begging other judges not to pursue warrants for said meth addict. He knew what he was doing was nothing short of unethical and got away scot-free. Among 4 other Nebraskan judges, including a Supreme Court judge, Mr. Vampola got to keep his pension because he resigned suddenly before the charges could be brought to him. New law must be introduced to safeguard against this type of resignation loophole. I put forth a resident call to action. Get informed, get involved. To public servants, do better, be better, hold yourself accountable and each other accountable. Do not be intimidated in the face of corruption. Together, we stand united for the betterment of all society. Thank you very much.
Larry Marvin.
Good evening. My name is Larry Marvin, 1945 Morningside Road, apartment 124, Fremont. And I'm here on vocabulary, kind of like he is. The word middle class It's a very offensive word because I used to be a eighth grade history teacher and a ninth grade civics teacher. And in the Declaration of Independence says we're all created equal, and the Constitution says we're all equal before the law. We do not have a class system in America. So any middle class is foreigners telling us this, and then we mouth it right back. And when you have middle class, you have upper class and you have lower class, and you make people feel inferior, that they're third class citizens. And so middle class, if you hear it, I tell people that they're traitors to the Constitution because we are not a class society. We're all first class citizens. And that tells me that people want to use middle class are not supporting us trying to solve problems. Okay, and the second one is liberal and conservative. Now, liberal means when America declared our independence and formed our, first it was a confederation, and then we reformed that into the Constitution. But in the olden days, all we had were criminal dictators around the world. They either had queens or kings or pharaohs or czars or Caesars, whatever they put their name on, they were nobles and they were supreme beings, and they had God's authority too, you know. So that's conservative, and they want to keep that power. And America is a liberal nation, and we took the power away from the King George, and we have our Constitution. We have our first Confederation, then our Constitution. So we, all of us Americans, are first-class citizens, and we all have rights, and we're called liberals. Now, sometimes the news media and other people, politicians too, talk about conservatives and liberals. And so we Americans are liberals. This is a liberal compared to the dictatorships of the history. All you have to do is read the history and that. So some people are trying to weasel around, in my opinion, to think that conservative is good and conservative is not. If you want to say you're a tightwad, you're physically responsible, fine, that's English. But a conservative is a political manipulation of the dictionary, and we can look that stuff up in the dictionary. And I have another word that I'm going to address you later because it's on the agenda. But thank you very much.
For those that just entered, we are in public comment, have about 15 minutes left. Anybody wishing to speak can speak on any item that's not on the agenda for up to 5 minutes. Come here and sign in up front. It's also the comment cards in the back.
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. Wanted to speak to you tonight about some issues that are open, at least I believe they're open in my perspective. It's been a year since the mayor signed the South Claremore Railroad project contracts for the land easement changes for the South Claremore Street realignment so paving and stormwater flooding issues could be resolved. This project has yet to come to fruition. Why not? It's been budgeted through 2 budget cycles. Resolution 2023-174 was unanimously passed back in July to address student safety issues involving the middle school and Johnson Crossing Elementary School. It ordered the Director of Public Works to facilitate construction of sidewalks on the north side of Jack Sutton Drive. Under city code, once noticed by the city, the landowner is required to construct sidewalks along the north side of Jack Sutton within 30 days. It's now November. There are still no sidewalks. The landowner has far exceeded the 30 days allowed by city code, and the city has also failed to build and bill the owner for the prescribed sidewalks per code. Why were the sidewalks not constructed? This council took action to facilitate that. Isn't anybody listening to you? The 2024 deadline for the city's use of ARPA funds is rapidly approaching. Which projects were chosen? By whom and when were they approved? And when will the projects be widely and publicly communicated along with knowledge about when they'll be fully completed to the public? Will the city be in compliance with the ARPA timeline? If not, why not? How much unspent ARPA funds is at risk? The state provided the city approximately $980,000 for tech park development. Grant terms require 31 qualified jobs in order for the city to retain the funding received from the state. Have 31 jobs been secured yet? Will they be secured before the grant funds must be returned to the state? If not, why not? Completion of the taxpayer-funded $29 million Beltway project was to bring traffic relief to various parts of the city. However, truck traffic relief to Broad Street residents is on hold, and the Morningside Road traffic issues have yet to be addressed. Lastly, it was publicly reported in the Tribune that the city had received a complaint for a council member's obvious violation of city code regarding open public comment period interaction with the public. It appears that this complaint was easily verifiable from video evidence, yet it appears that this violation of city code and the misconduct may have yet to be acted on by the city prosecutor, or this council. Why not? The Tribune also reported that the complaint itself is being withheld as a result of a public records request. I firmly believe that all these things are things that the council should be pursuing, and you should pursue these things with some vigor when you've given direction to city employees and city staff to have things completed. You are the instructing body. You are the approving body. And when they don't accomplish what you've approved, that sends a loud message. It certainly does to the public. It certainly does to me as a former council member. My expectation is when the council speaks, action occurs. I'm not seeing that happen. Transparency to the public is not happening. At least it's not happening as greatly as it should be. And that is your responsibility. Everybody in the front of the room, not just the mayors, it's everybody's responsibility to communicate all of these things, the status of these things. And if they're not being accomplished, why not? I encourage you to check into these things and find out why they haven't been accomplished yet. Thank you.
Ray Tuff.
Ray Tuff, 323 West Fifth Street. I know that this may be before some of your guys' time, but there's a couple of you that were on council during the time of July 2018. If y'all remember, there was an elderly woman that was arrested for speaking over her time limit. Originally, chief and his desk cop charged her with second-degree trespassing from here of council chambers. Ultimately, her charges were reduced. She ended up getting a violation of city code fine for $25. That hasn't even happened to Mr. Jensen. As far as I'm aware of, there has not been anything filed against him for the way that he has treated and disrespected not only the mayor, you guys, but the whole city of Fremont. Something has got to be done about this man. I mean, over and over, he throws Robert's rules right out the window. He doesn't follow any of that. And I'm just asking you guys because you might be discouraged a little bit from the last time that it was brought to your attention about his behavior and it went nowhere. But I encourage you guys to bring it back and try to get something done about his behavior. You would never see Von Barron or Ellis or anybody acting in that manner. So we wouldn't expect him to as well. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we only get to talk once.
Yeah.
Hey, the time is 7 o'clock. That concludes public comment. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll go ahead and open up the Board of Equalization meeting and call it to order. The time is 7 o'clock. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. This time we'll have roll call.
Please vote for roll call. Seven council members are present, Mayor.
Item 1 is Resolution 2023-253, levying a special tax and assessment in the amount of $146.81 against Green Lawn, 3rd East 55 Lot 5, West 7.5 Lot 6, Block 13. And a lot of other numbers, Tyler.
Yeah. So this item is basically the property's been taken care of by the city. They were notified to clean it up. It wasn't handled and the city took care of it. Subsequently, there was a bill that has not been paid. And so we would like to assess that amount. I did check that the balance does still remain as of 4 o'clock today. So I would request the city council authorize me to levy this assessment against the property so we can collect what is due.
Questions for staff? Okay. Any comments from the public on this item? Any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2023-253.
Councilman Vaughn,
I will second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Item 2 is resolution 2023-254, levying a special tax and assessment in the amount of $285.69. This would be for 22nd and Irving to pay the cost of weed and debris removal and assessment.
Mayor and council, again, this is another item where we would look to collect via special assessment for a property that was cleaned up and has not been paid. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for staff on this specific item? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Vaughn,
Motion to approve.
Councilman Von Baron,
Second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Councilwoman Lathrop,
Second.
cast your votes to adjourn the Board of Equalization meeting.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned. I'll go ahead and open up the city council regular meeting. The time is 7:03. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. And at this time, we'll have roll call.
Please vote for roll call. 7 council members are present, Mayor.
Okay. Next is mayor's comments. I'd just like to wish everyone a safe and fun Halloween. I know it's maybe a little colder than we would have hoped, but hope everyone again has a fun Halloween. Please be safe and vigilant out there this evening. And then I would also like to, we have one individual who is celebrating a service award. This is Jeremy Jurgens, 5 years of service. Jeremy started with the DU as a wastewater plant operator 1 in 2018. Then he got promoted to wastewater plant operator 2 in 2022. Jeremy's not able to be with us today, but appreciate his 5 years of service with the city of Fremont. That concludes my comments. We'll go on to item 1, which is a motion to adopt the current agenda for the October 31st, 2023 regular meeting. And I just wanted to clarify item 19 in new business. I think the A and the B kind of got left off the agenda. So just to clarify, that item will have 2 votes on both of those resolutions for item 19 for the agenda, just for clarification. Councilwoman Ganem.
Move to adopt the current agenda for the October 31st meeting.
Councilman Jensen,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Moving on to appointments is the move to consent to the mayor's reappointment of Frank Clement to the Housing Agency Board to a term ending September 2028. This is a reappointment of Mr. Frank Clement to the Housing Agency Board. Take any questions from the council. If there are none, I'd take a motion. Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, just one comment. It would be nice for those of us who don't necessarily know these people, basic qualifications or whatever. I have no objection to either one, but it would be nice to have just a short thumbnail of maybe what they've done, their tenure, just some of the basics behind who they are.
I appreciate that. What I have done is any reappointments. I haven't asked the individual to do that. Any new appointments, anybody that is new, like Miss Rail, I do ask. So I again encourage, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you understand the individual. But that has been kind of how I've approached it. Any reappointments, I have not. If they are new, I do, like I did with Miss Rail in tonight's agenda. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make the motion to approve the reappointment of Frank Clement, Housing Agency Board.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Second the motion.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Then item 3 is a motion to approve the mayoral appointment of Liz Rail to the Ridge Cemetery Board to a term ending December 2024. As you can see, I'm happy to be able to present Miss Liz Rail to the Ridge Cemetery Board. She was, again, kind enough to include a letter in the backup, and is really excited about serving on this board. So I'd take any questions from the council on this appointment. If there are none, I'd take a motion. Councilwoman Ganem.
I would move we approve the appointment of Liz Rail to Ridge Cemetery Board.
Councilman Jensen.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Moving on to the consent agenda, all items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda by council or staff? Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, I'd appreciate some discussion on items 7, 9, and 13.
Okay. Any items from staff? Any items from the public to be removed?
We have some discussion on item 6, please.
Seeing no other items, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda. Items 4, 5, 8, 10 through 12, 14, and 15. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make that motion.
Councilman Sukram.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Item 6 is to receive the September 2023 animal reports. If the constituent wants to come up and ask the question that they have. You state your name and address.
Good evening. This is Kathy Robertson, 1896 Luther Lane, Hooper. I had not intending to look into these, but I noticed that the numbers don't add up. And if you go back several months, the ending count for the month does not match the beginning count. So then the ending count for that month is off. And I can give you examples, but it's my understanding that the ending count should match of August should match September, and it does not. It's off by 9 animals. Where did those 9 animals go? So then if you just do the math across that summary page, there's 89 cats they report as being in custody. I think 23 came in, 26 went out, or vice versa. And they still have 89 animals at the end of the month, 89 cats at the end of the month. Somebody's not doing the math, something's not adding up, not quite sure what's going on. But wasn't there, as part of the contract, or part of something, a resolution or the ordinance, that there was some type of oversight that was supposed to be put in place to check these things? And this is not just this month. Back in 2022, there was a month where 26 animals went missing. I'm guessing, I can only assume that people aren't reading these and doing the math. If you take the beginning count or the ending count of August and the number of animals that came in and went out, you should have 139 at the end of the month. They say they have 145. But if you take the beginning count that they provided, doesn't even match the ending count that they provide if you do the math across that summary. So it's anywhere from 139, 145 to 150, I believe. So what's accurate? What's the truth? I think, citizens put an awful lot of money, taxpayer money, into this, animal control. And I think accuracy and transparency is very, very important. That's the only reason why I thought we should talk about this, that maybe these reports need to be looked at a little bit further. Thank you.
Additional comments from the public? Okay. Additional comments from council? Councilman Vaughn?
I think it's a worthy question to be asked. I can only assume that there's some arithmetic that I'm not fully understanding. And I'm not sure that this would prevent us from receiving the report, but I can only ask that upon the next month's receipt that we would have a little bit better explanation, if that's possible.
Okay. Any other comments from the council? Okay. Would that be a motion then, Councilman Vaughn?
Yes, I would make a motion to receive.
Okay. Councilman Jensen?
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Item 7 is resolution 2023-255, approving a contract amendment with JEO for engineering services related to the 2023 traffic signal improvement project.
Good evening, Justin Zetterman, Director of Public Works. So this particular item is related to the 23rd Street study that we provided the report to you a few months back. If you remember, in that report, they found that our equipment's a little more outdated, probably needs a lot more work done than we'd originally expected. And so as a part of the budget for this year and next year, we increased the amount of money that would be going to that. And we're kind of condensing all of the intersections into a 5-year program at a cost of somewhere around $2 million. So this additional contract right now is here so that JEO can design for Luther and for Clarkson this winter, and we'll do that along with Bell. The previous contract included money for the design of Bell. This is money that would have been spent in out years with the original plan. But because we're going to try and get as much done as quickly as we can, there's just going to be more design and construction management work that they'll be doing this coming construction season. Happy to answer any questions.
Councilman Von Baron.
No, the only reason I asked about it was the size of the difference with $91,000. So is that primarily study or is that primarily outdated equipment that we're updating?
This contract amendment, we've moved past the study. This is for final design documents, assistance with the bidding process, and then construction oversight to get it done.
So the bulk of it is design, not necessarily equipment.
This does not include the cost of the equipment and the construction. This is their design effort. We will go out for bid, I would guess sometime in February, where we'll hire a contractor who would supply the equipment and install it as needed.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Comments from the public on this item?
Larry Marvin, 1945 Morningside Road, apartment 124. My question is, we're going to give them $2 million just to draw up the plan?
He can't answer questions where he's
Oh,
at.
okay. Well, the council, anyway, that's my
We
question.
can't.
You know, if someone already had a pre-plan and it was going to be 91,000, now it's going to be 2 million, that's a lot of money difference. In my opinion, anyway.
Any other comments from the public?
Brad Yeager, 2318 East Fifth Street. As I recall, when the discussion about all of the traffic lights occurred in earlier agenda discussions, there was discussion about there not being a traffic light put in across from Walmart at the exit. I forget what the street name is that's coming out of the new grade school. And I think the commentary was, well, it's too close to Luther. We can't have a stoplight there to control traffic. I would encourage this council to ask the consultant or to actually force the consultant to change that design. Can you imagine buses loaded with children turning across a 4-lane street? I guess I'll call it, it's no longer the highway, but a 4-lane street with speed limits in excess of 40-45 miles an hour, uncontrolled. I can't imagine that we would want our bus drivers to put our children at risk without traffic controls. The other thing that's of concern in this design is you're going to be doing Luther Street work. There really needs to be consideration of what you're actually doing on Luther Street between 16th and 23rd Street with an exit on 22nd Street that's controlled by a light 1 block away, and whether or not that's going to be functional, and whether or not you can get the traffic out of 22nd Street and stack it up on Luther, and how you control that light in order to affect traffic movement. I don't know if that was all part of their study or not, but it should be before they finish new design work that doesn't take any of that into account. And in conjunction with that, you know, you really probably ought to be considering paving from 16th to 23rd, so those turn lanes can be put in for traffic control there. That would all tie into the traffic flow assessment that's being made for the 23rd and Luther traffic light for the amount of movement time, et cetera, that's necessary. I don't know if that was part of their original or study or not, but I encourage you to make sure that it is, so that traffic in and out of that new grade school will function and function safely. So please, if you haven't made those requests of the consultant in their final design work, please make that a part of your request. Thank you.
Milton Street. Milton.
Any other comments from the public? Okay. Any additional comments from council on this? Councilman Jensen?
If there's no additional comment, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2023-255.
Councilman Von Baron?
Second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Item 9 is resolution 2023-257, authorizing the Fremont Department of Utility staff to purchase a Ditch Witch HX30A vacuum trailer through Sourcewell from Ditch Witch under Con.
Mayor, City Council, Jeff Shanahan, Utility General Manager. This is a new piece of equipment primarily going to be used for the distribution department. Currently, there's all kinds of infrastructure underground. So when we go to set a new pole or something like that, it's very difficult for line crews to use their drilling equipment that's on the truck. So we typically have been using the water department's jet truck to vac these holes open so we can plant poles in there. The jet truck is used all the time in maintaining the sewer system. So we're proposing that we get a jet truck that can be utilized for them, and the power plant uses it for cleaning up equipment when there's spills and that kind of thing. So we went out for bids on this, got a Sourcewell contract price. And this is the one we're recommending.
Okay. Questions? Councilman Von Baron.
This is another one. I don't necessarily have an objection to it. It's just, I think a request in that amount, we're looking at $118,000. And I'm trying to wrap my head around, I know we're going to have conflicts of inflation and lead times and all of those things, but an item, I guess it's probably the size of the request that troubled me. Is this a function of lead time, or was it already budgeted? Or
this was a budgeted item.
It was previously budgeted. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Comments from the public on this item? Seeing none, take a motion in regards to this item. Councilman Vaughn.
Make a motion to approve.
Councilman Sukram.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Item 13 is resolution 2023-249, authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with Olson Inc. for engineering fees and a water and sewer hydraulic study.
Mayor, City Council, Jeff Shanahan, Utility General Manager. This is for, we developed an RFP, request for proposals, and sent it out to engineering firms to help us model the water system and to look at our sanitary sewer system for capacity. What this will allow us to do is look at, as Fremont grows, and we want to add a development, or we want to add something to it. We don't want to just arbitrarily stick a pipe in the ground and say that's good enough, it'll have no impact on the system. So we're going to get a model of our water system. Then we can place in it what the load's going to be and look at how that impacts the rest of the system. So that's the water hydraulic side of it is. And then the other side is the storm or the sanitary sewer portion, just to make sure that we're not overloading any of our sanitary sewer lines anywhere on our system. So we went out for RFPs, and Olson's was the low bid, and we're recommending Olson.
Questions? Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, again, the only reason for my comment is just the amount. I mean, if you tally these three up, I don't have any particular objection against any of them. But if you tally these three up, we've got $307,000 that's just being sent through on the consent agenda. I understand the reason. I don't think anybody's trying to do anything untoward or whatever. I'm not concerned about that. But it's over $300,000 of expenses on the consent agenda. As Mr. Martinez referred to the auditor's report a number of years ago. I'm just a little paranoid. Again, Jeff, I have no problem with you because you've been nothing but straightforward. But it's just the whole concept of approving amounts like this by one fell swoop. I'm not sure what the answer is, but it's just something that it's certainly not your situation, Jeff. It's something I'd just like to understand better as a council, whether or not we could maybe parse these out a little more cleanly, just so that we're, if nothing else, in the name of transparency. So I think it's a council issue. Thank you.
Understood.
Any comments from the public on this item? Okay. Additional comments from council? If there are none, I'd take a motion. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2023-0263.
hold on. Resolution 2023-249.
I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, you're fine. Okay, Councilman Von Baron,
I'll second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Moving on to unfinished business, item 16, ordinance 5657 to amend sections 11-824 and 11-825 of the Unified Development Code relating to off-premise directional signs and to off-premise commercial electronic messaging signs. This would be for second reading.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is a request to allow off-premise electronic messaging signs around the perimeter of the city, on the South Bypass, the 275, Highway 275 and 30/275, and then 77 as they go north. If approved, the signs would be allowed only by conditional use permit and only in the underlying zoning districts of general commercial, general industrial, light industrial, Port Authority. And in that corridor, they would be required to be 5,000 feet apart from another electronic sign face in the same direction. There was also a request to consider electronic message signs on the 23rd Street corridor between 275 and Ridge Road, and then also the North Broad Street corridor from 23rd Street north to the interchange. The request that was made by a representative of the sign company was that the sign be 6,000 feet from another off-premise sign. 4 static sign faces and their structures would be required to be removed from within the city limits. The maximum height would be restricted to 35 feet. The size of the sign would be 10.6 by 36 feet. The leading edge of the sign would be a maximum of 40 feet from the front lot line, right-of-way line, and that no existing off-premise signs be allowed west of the existing sign at 23rd and Bell. I would suggest that it seems only fair if we are going to allow any electronic signs on Bell Street on the east end, then an equal distance on the west end would be fair as well. In the packet, there is a map that shows the distances of the different corridors. If you go 6,000 feet to the east of 23rd and Bell Street, where there's an existing ECM sign, it puts you in the vicinity of just a little bit east of 23rd and Luther Street. If you go west, that puts you at about Summer Street, or by the cemetery. Summer Street would be the closest with the underlying zoning. The signs would have to be 100 feet away from residential uses. And then there's not enough additional distance to have another electronic sign on 23rd Street. So essentially, it would be limiting it to 2 electronic signs on 23rd Street, where 4 static messages per pole would have to come down. On the Broad Street corridor, it's 8,000 feet long. So realistically, you could only get 1 double-faced electronic sign in that corridor. With that, I guess, kind of broad summary, but I'd be happy to try and answer any questions.
Councilman Jensen,
Just to make clear, I mean, this is by conditional use, so every single one of these signs would have to come to council and where it was going to go exactly. So this would be.
That's correct.
We're not taking ourselves out of the loop here by voting for this. It's still by pardon me, by conditional use, every single sign is going to come in front of council.
Every one of these signs would have to come to Planning Commission and City Council through the conditional use permit process. That's correct.
any other questions for staff? Councilman Vaughn?
You had lots of backing information in here, and I thank you for that. The illumination standards, whether it's candle feet, lumens, or what other method you want to measure by, are those comparable to existing electronic signs that are in place today?
I would argue they're probably very different. My understanding, and we do have specialists here from the industry who can probably better answer that question. My understanding is that the new electronic message signs for the billboards type signs have pixels that are able to be directed, and they're not as bright as some of the ones that you would see on local businesses here in town. And in fact, they're probably not as highly illuminated as some of the static billboards that you see on different corridors.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Lathrop.
I just wanted to clarify one thing as far as the signs, to the west of 77. Is there any FAA rules or regulations, guidelines that we have to follow? I'm guessing there are as far as.
If an area is in the approach zone for the airport, anything above a certain height would have to receive the approval of the FAA.
Okay, but nothing as far as, it's just in the flight zone that would be, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Comments from the public on this item?
Larry Marvin, 1945 Morningside Road, apartment 124. I have four things. One is Lady Bird Johnson, back when I had Potter Hardware store out in Long Pine, she was having us no more signs along federal highways, and Highway 20 was our highway. And we had to take down some of the signs out there, and we couldn't put up signs because you're supposed to see the beautiful countryside. And that was under Lady Bird Johnson back in the 60s. So if the federal government put out these ordinances or federal laws, then are we following them? Because 77 and 275 are federal highways. And if we're going to be putting signage on them, are we following federal law? And I don't know if the attorney's listening to me or not, but that's something that I think about Lady Bird Johnson with beautifying the countryside and not having all these signs, because it did affect our businesses out there in the Sandhills. And then the second thing would be, the other day, a lady came late to water aerobics because a semi-truck jackknifed on one of our cul-de-sacs here on 77 bypass. And so I don't know if the jackknife was because of signage or lack of signage or what it was caused, but that might be something to pay attention to also with this new signage. And then the third thing is offensive word. In my dictionary, the word gringo is an offensive word. Now, we do have a restaurant by the name of Gringo, but this big sign on the newspaper here, I got out my magnifying glass because I'm colorblind and I could read gringo on there. And that is an offensive word. So, and then the fourth thing would be in New York City, the area out there, the new congressman, he got elected and basically he was the biggest liar in the world and he got elected. And if we're going to put up signs, do the sign people have to watch what they're putting up? You know, is it offensive to people? Is it a lie or false advertisement? Because I don't get to control it, but I get to read this stuff. And usually it's after the fact, but that's just something. But Lady Bird was pretty important.
Good evening, David Mitchell, 81 West Fifth. I represent Nelson Enterprises, DBA Victor Outdoor Advertising. Just a few things. First, the Lady Bird Act is still alive and well. It applies to all the corridors around Fremont, applies to 77, also applies to Bell Street, because I think that's old 275. That was before my time, but I know it applies on Bell Street. It also applies on 23rd as it comes through town. So they've got us hogtied from every which way. So long story short, these signs that go up have to comply with state law, which also complies with federal law. And just a couple of additional points as far as the lumens are concerned, in addition to what Jennifer said about the directional aspect of the lighting and the fact that they tend to be less bright than your incandescent lights that you see along the interstate system, particularly west of Lincoln, but they can be automatically dimmed. And that's typically what Victor Outdoor does as well. When we get to the night when you don't need them as bright as you do in the daytime, then those are going to come down as well. Hopefully we're on relatively the same page as far as the corridors around Fremont in terms of the need for the signs and the overall objectives that we've worked on with this legislation for the past couple of years in order to prevent a proliferation of outdoor advertising signs on the outer corridor, while also giving our local businesses an opportunity to advertise and attract businesses to town, in addition to the opportunity to have public service announcements for flood, weather events, other Amber Alerts and whatnot, as well as announcing community service events. So these signs have a definite demand. The cost, they don't get erected unless there's a definite demand for these signs because of the excess cost. And so with that demand will come these signs, and in limited form, one every 5,000 feet at a max on the outer corridor. And that will benefit our community in the end, particularly from the business standpoint. The inner city limits signage was a relatively recent development in our discussions. Initially in our discussions, there weren't going to be any new signs allowed at all within the city limits. But then we got to discussing the Bell Street signs that Victor has, for example, in addition to the competitor to Victor that has signs in other areas of the city that aren't very attractive. The signs that near 16th and Bell Street are just flat out unsightly. They're profitable, but they're not good looking signs. And I know Wealth Partners to the south would love to see those gone, as well as probably Fry's to the north. So we said, if we can come up with an idea of electronic messaging in portions of town where it's primarily commercial, and in the process, we give up 4 faces so that we beautify the city in those areas where those boards are unsightly, but we provide a means of additional advertising for businesses in the commercial corridors where you expect such signage. That's how we came up with this concept. And Councilman Bond's comments last session were taken to heart too, where we sat down further and said, okay, let's make sure for the most part that these signs are going to be out closer to TSC, closer to North Broad Street. Jennifer had thought about West 23rd. We don't have any concern with that, but primarily we thought as a practical matter from a business perspective, you're probably looking at East 23rd or North Broad, where you might see another ECM sign as part of this inner city type of ordinance that has been developed. The only comments I would have with respect to the proposed red line legislation, there's under, I think, section 2E, there's a reference to where the leading edge of the sign, how close it has to be to the right of way. I think it says no closer than 25 nor farther than 40, which just gives us 15 feet. I think the intent was that we could be anywhere within 40 feet of the right of way, so we can go up to the edge, which is what the state rules allow with respect to outdoor signage, as far as 40 feet away to give us wiggle room in terms of the placement of the sign. The 15 feet seems a little bit narrow, and we could clean that up if council was inclined on the third reading. But otherwise, we're in agreement with the staff report. We appreciate the dialogue, and I would be happy to answer any questions from the business standpoint that you might have.
Councilman Vaughn.
Is it your client's intent that when they would bring forth a request to erect one of these new signs, that they would name the 4 existing static signs that would come down?
Yes, in Victor's case, I can tell you in advance, they would be the Bell Street signs. I don't know if Lamar or another competitor came in. I don't know what locations they would choose, but we'd be looking at Bell Street.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Additional comments from the public?
Red Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. I wanted to speak to this. I thought Councilman Vaughn was on the right track at the last discussion when he said, 23rd Street's not a really good candidate for this. I want to say this, having, been across the country racing for a lot of years and watched a lot of this stuff. I think what's been put into this effort is good. I think that locating some of this along the bypass cul-de-sacs, all good. That's where you see a lot of this across the country. You don't want them in areas where there'll be significant distraction. 23rd Street, do you want distraction around Luther Street when you're putting in a new school? They really don't need to be distracted. I think some other comments were made as well. We have a different character in mind with regards to inner city. I think that's true. And electronic signboards aren't necessarily that conducive to that as well. I think that, the way that I would have recommended that this be written is that, this kind of thing can go between the city limits and the ETJ. That's where these signs could be placed today because they're entering into Fremont from the north, the east, the south, et cetera. I missed the red line, and maybe I just missed it as to where that goes now in the current red line for South Broad, because it was my understanding that Broad Street has been renamed. It's no longer Highway 77, it's Broad Street. I think Highway 30 has been renamed 23rd Street. It goes around Fremont. That's the highway. And so we need to make sure what we're referencing and what we write into code actually reflects the street names that are appropriate. I could be wrong. So those that looked into this, maybe they're correct with what's here, but we need to make sure that we have that correct. I mentioned the last time that the new UDC that has yet come back to this council was supposed to be looking in large part at signage. I don't know. I couldn't find on the city's website what Jose Levin was suggesting with regards to signing and what they had signage and what they had in the comprehensive plan associated with signage. But I know that they had a lot of design work that they showed us in the process that was going on. And I don't know if this fits into the scheme of things or not. And you don't, in my mind, want to pass a piece of code now that's not going to be incorporated in the code you hopefully are going to adopt soon. I realize this could be incorporated in what they've done, but if they've already given you different direction than what's being asked for here, you should be considering the direction and the rationale they had for what they were going to propose in the first place. So I encourage you to get that information before third reading. I'm also concerned about the messaging. I don't know how this works in the end. Once you construct these boards and who actually controls the messaging. If you're just messaging and referring to businesses that aren't on that particular location and where you find them someplace in town, that's one thing. If you're using them for all other kinds of messaging, which is outside the city's control, that's maybe entirely a different thing because you're the ones that are going to be granting the signage. So placement's important. Messaging will be important. Compliance with the new UDC or complementary fitting with the new UDC is all important. I hope you take some of that into account as you roll this into third reading. I do think that you really need to be cautious about what you put between the 23rd Street corridor north until you get to the city limits. You need to be very cautious about what you would put on 23rd Street for any reason. We already have accidents on that street. We don't need more distractions. Having them on the cul-de-sac boundaries for drawing people into Fremont makes perfect sense. And I applaud them for wanting to put signage up for those purposes. But I do caution you to be careful what you do on Bell Street, Broad Street, 23rd Street, both in north and south and east and west inside the city limits. Enough said. Thank you.
Right. Comments from council. Councilman Jensen.
If there's no further comment, I'll make the motion to move ordinance 5657 into the second reading.
Councilman Vaughn.
I will second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor. An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending Exhibit B of Ordinance 5427, specifically portions of the UDC Chapter 11 zoning subdivision and site development. Exhibit B, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability and providing an effective date on second reading.
Moving on to new business, item 17 is resolution 2023-259, approving the proposed Keno grant awards as recommended by the Keno Advisory Committee.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Angie Olson, Grant Coordinator. The last round of Keno grant applications were due October 1st. The Keno Advisory Committee met before the last council meeting. And you have a list in the staff report of the recommended Keno amounts. We received 13 applications, which is the most applications that we've received to date. And the total amount of requests is actually just above $62,000. The budgeted amount of Keno funds to award is actually $50,000. So the Keno Advisory Committee had a lot of discussion around how to best allocate the funds, and also if they were to reduce some of the funds, whose do you choose to reduce? How do you decide whose project is a better project than maybe another one? So we went around and around. There was a lot of great discussion. In the end, it was decided that this round, the best option to do would be to award the full requests, the total of all 13 applications that were received, because they were all worthy projects. And then in the future, by probably next spring, before the April round, we'll come back with some new options for the Keno grant funds and other ways to maybe go about awarding these funds and curb this type of situation. But they were all, the Keno Advisory Board felt they were all good, worthy projects, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for staff? Councilman Von Baron?
I think, and if I am understanding correctly, Angie, these projects are scored by the advisory board.
Yes, there is somewhat of a scoring system. A lot of it is based on the discussion portion within the meeting as well. But there is a scoring sheet available. But either way, the advisory board felt like it's hard then, even if you have a 1 through 13 level, who gets the full amount, who gets just 50% of their ask. That became a tough decision.
Okay, no, man. Yeah, I'm sure some of these are not clear cut. I guess my only thought was it would be helpful if there's a scoring system, just if it could be included in the packet. It would be very helpful for us to be able to see, not necessarily to second guess or critique, but it would be interesting and helpful, I think, to see why they were scored, what projects were considered, that kind of thing.
So this round, so there is a scoring sheet, and that is what the Keno Advisory Board has available to them. This round was all based on discussion, given the number of grant applications that we had.
So do we keep minutes or anything on those discussions?
No.
Okay, it's, yeah.
It's just, it's a recommendation to the council. The council is you get to vote and decide how the funds are allocated. So it's really simply a recommendation. And yeah, there are no minutes. The way I understand it, it's not a formal board or committee. It's just an advisory board to the council.
Okay. I'm just trying to get my head around this. At some point, it'd be nice to at least understand the rationale. I mean, basically what we're doing is I have no problem with the council. I have no reason to question them, but we're, here, approve these. And it would be nice to have some rationale or background.
Sure.
So that would be appreciated.
And that would, I think you have opportunity too, because the Keno Advisory Board is comprised of council members. So I think they'd be open to any questions you might have too.
Okay.
I'm speaking for them though.
It'd be just helpful to have some of that background included in the staff report. Thank you.
Councilman Jensen?
Yes, that's where I was going. Maybe you'd be helpful to the public, so we know who the Keno Advisory members of council are. I don't know who they are. I know Mark Lakeman used to be, but he's not anymore. Can you enlighten everybody on that?
please?
Sure. So Dev Sukram, Mayor, and James Vaughn.
Councilman Vaughn.
I would just add a comment to your question. And it has to do with the scoring sheets, and we did not utilize them this round because we thought these were all worthy projects. And so if we were going to recommend approving them all, there wasn't much sense in having a scoring sheet that kind of outlined the fact that we were wanting to approve them all, from my perspective anyhow.
Well, and I will say the scoring sheet was implemented, I believe, about a year and a half ago, when shortly after I came on board. And having been here for a few rounds of these, I'm not sure that it's the most accurate measurement. It's a little bit complicated. So that was something that we had some discussions, including scoring, but also like the number of recurring applicants, capital improvement projects, the capped award amount. So all things that we're going to consider before next spring and come up with maybe some new ideas on how to go about awarding the funds.
Again, we really do deliberate on this. I've been a part of these discussions as my time as mayor. I've been a part of Keno advisory group where we have more money than we have basically applicants. So I mean, where we can't give out all the money that we have that's supposed to be for community betterment. So this time was unique in the fact that we did have, more money or more applicants than necessarily we have budget, but talking to finance and Keno, that would, again, we'd be able to, at this moment, give the requested amounts to each of the organizations. But going back in the staff report, I think Angie spoke, we're going to reconsider, capital improvement projects and the capped award amount and other things before we come back again, just so that, again, we can find the right balance. And so that's really the discussion that we had. So, when it comes down to it, I feel comfortable with where we're at on this. And again, with the idea that, again, we're going to reevaluate this for the next award. So. Any other questions? Comments from the public on this item?
Anyway, to make one more visit to the podium tonight, but I wanted to make a couple of comments with regards to this. I know that you all are aware that I am a reader of rules and regulations. So I wanted to draw your attention to a couple of things based on the statements that were asked about where's the matrix information that would be helpful to the council. And the discussion was, well, we didn't do it this time. We just had discussion. So I would point you to page 2 of the guidelines of the Keno application process that says they're reviewed and scored. It doesn't say they are reviewed and might be scored. It says they are reviewed and scored. I guess that didn't happen, contrary to what it says that you do in order to perform your duties as a committee. Secondly, after looking at this, I was really intrigued by the fact that this is described in item 2, rule 2, as a mayor's committee. I encourage you to take a look at the Fremont Municipal Code as to what a mayor's committee does. They report to the mayor, period. We had quite a debate about whether or not a mayor's committee is reportable to the city council, whether the city council can even get access to that material, whether it's a matter of public record. And early on in my tenure, none of that was acceptable. It was a mayor's committee. The results of anything went to the mayor, and that was it. So in the next paragraph, it says, item 3, the committee makes its recommendations to the council. Doesn't seem like that's appropriate. It's a mayor's committee. Recommendation should go to the mayor. He serves on the committee, so I guess you wouldn't be making that recommendation. But if this was a council committee rather than a mayor's committee, then you would be reporting out to council and giving recommendations. The difference would be the council would be setting the people that are on this committee, not the mayor. So there is a difference, and I encourage you to consider all those things when we look at how we're operating the Keno funds. And then I know this came up when I was on council before and some of these reviews. you have a lot of good recipients this time. Normally awards are given out, an opportunity to sign up for awards twice a year. You've opted to give out all the money in one fell swoop, meaning that there won't be an award as stated in the staff report. There won't be an award in the middle of the year or whatever for anything remaining because you didn't hold anything back. So there may be good projects that are going to have to wait a whole year because they didn't make the deadline initially. In years past, by splitting the funds up, you had an opportunity to come in. So I encourage you to kind of consider that as you go forward, rather than giving out all the money in one fell swoop that locks it up for a year. You might want to hold some back. You also might want to really consider those that apply repeatedly. And when I say repeatedly, I mean every time. If you're looking for criteria as to how would have I adjusted some of the funds up or down and still giving it all out, you might have looked at, well, when did they get money the last time and how much did they get? I think it would have been an excellent criteria for saying, yeah, that's worth making, we can hold some back and have some for the second round. So those are just some observations that I have. I encourage the committee to take those into account as you go forward. Maybe you want to take a look at the rules and regulations that you have for operation and whether you're in compliance with city code. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public on this item? Okay. Additional comments or questions from council? Councilman Jensen?
Just to Mr. Yerger's point, I'd like to say to the committee, be careful about limiting people who ask every year. I'll point to Cass Angels. Cass Angel is one that's on here every single year. Cass Angel is always there. If we choose not to fund that because they're always asking for funding, a lot of the things that they are doing are going to fall on the people that are doing the animal control for our city. And it's going to, that was really my only point on this, is that some of the ones that are there all the time, there's a reason that they're all the time.
Any other comments from council? Seeing none, I'd take a motion. Councilman Jensen?
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution 2023-259.
Councilman Sukram?
I'll second it.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-1 with one abstention, Mayor. 6-0 with one abstention.
Okay, moving on to item 18, resolution 2023-260, approving memorandum of understanding and entered into an agreement with Headwaters Economics to develop concept of expanding Johnson Lake to utilize excess capacity for water detention.
Good evening, Justin Zetterman, Director of Public Works. Not long after I started, we met with the Parks Board and talked to them about a concept that we had to utilize Johnson Lake as a storage facility for helping to do some flood risk reduction. It was an idea that they seem to all be in favor of. Earlier this year, Tom Smith with Dodge County had been in contact with this group out of Montana, and he referred them to me, and we talked, and they were very interested in this project and how they could support it. And so what they have offered to do is work with a local consultant to expand on the concept, and then the final delivery will be the RFP that we will then send out for final design so we can move forward with this. The lake is very low, so obviously there's plenty of opportunity for storage there. We're looking at, is there a way we can have storage while also maybe making the lake more usable by keeping more water in it? Currently has no inflow from anywhere other than what falls on it or the groundwater that it currently sets its level. So it's a project that I think can help with the flooding around First Street by diverting some of that water out away from having to go through the small culvert under the railroad tracks by the power plant. And just make some improvements in that area for small storm events. So, and as far as the agreement with us, it does not require us to move forward with the project. It does not commit us to spending any money. It is just kind of an understanding of what we will be doing, and some of this has been done. We met last week with stakeholders, and they'll be taking that information, and we'll have another meeting towards the end of November, and hopefully by the end of the year have that RFP so we can get that out for design. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Councilman Vaughn?
If this were to all come to fruition, would this kind of lay the groundwork for moving the ditch on Luther away from the street as it is currently and providing the ability to then potentially widen or add a sidewalk, that kind of thing? Do I understand that correctly?
That is correct. The city has purchased ground there to the east, and we would move the ditch to there into a shape and form where we could much better maintain it, much softer slopes that you could mow. That would be the concept that we're moving towards.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Councilwoman Lathrop?
I just want to say that this is kind of a no-brainer, getting that water away from First Street when it rains, and what a fantastic use of that space and of Johnson Lake. And I am totally for this memo of understanding.
I admit, I brought this up 8 years ago and was very excited when I had an early meeting with Jody and the mayor, and there was money to do something like this. So I think it can be beneficial.
And just to be clear, the agreement with Headwaters, they're not charging the city anything. This is a nonprofit, I assume, or I don't know, kind of organization, but there's really no liability to the city. They're just doing this because to help cities like us that have basically drainage.
That's correct. That's their mission. And be perfectly honest, I don't think they wanted to add any of our bureaucracy to the process, and it was just easier to go straight to the consultant. So.
Any other questions? Okay, any comments from the public?
Larry Marvin, 1945 Morningside Road, apartment 124. I've noticed ever since I drive down Claremore Street, between about 14th and 16th, there's a great big ditch on the west side, and it's for the round culverts, it's half full of dirt. And I think I went to a Rawhide meeting, they had maps and stuff. And I said, well, if you're talking about off-site storage of water, if we dug that dirt back out of Claremore ditch, that could be more retention, kind of like what we're talking about for heading some over to Johnson Lake. So right here in town, I think we could take some of that dirt out of there and make that retention area too.
Any other comments from the public on this item? Okay. Any other comments from council? If none, I would take a motion. Councilman Jensen?
I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2023-260.
Councilman Sukram?
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, item 19 is the authorization to enter into a local public agency program agreement for grant funding of the Fever Rail to Trail project. First is resolution 2023-261, authorizing the mayor to sign the local public agency program agreement with the state of Nebraska Department of Transportation.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Angie Olson, Grant Coordinator. Last July, we received word that the City of Fremont's application for the Transportation Alternatives Grant Program was receiving an award. And the next step is entering into agreement with the State of Nebraska Department of Transportation. The mayor would need to sign that. That's one of the resolutions attached to this agenda item. And the second requirement for the contract agreement is that we assign an LPA project liaison. LPA is local public agency. So a local public agency, which is the city project liaison. In this case, that would be the Director of Public Works, Justin Zetterman. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for staff? Okay, thank you. Any comments from the public on this item? Any additional comments from council? If there are none, I want to take a motion in regards to the first resolution 2023-261. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make that motion for approve resolution 2023-261.
Councilman Von Baron.
I'll second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Then item B would be resolution 2023-262, appointing Justin Zetterman as the local public agency project liaison. Any other comments from council on this? Are there any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'd take a motion in regards to this resolution 2023-262. Councilwoman Keno.
We approve resolution 2023-262.
Councilman Sukram. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Item 20 is resolution 2023-265, authorizing the mayor to sign the memorandum of understanding with the IAFF union. Any staff report on this item?
Good evening, Jody Sanders, City Administrator, stepping in for Jennifer McDuffie, who is trick or treating with her children tonight. As part of the budget process, we looked at and we spoke with the council about plans that we had for making some changes to the wages that would be outside of the contract that we had in place with various unions. In this particular case tonight, we're talking about the fire union. The mayor and I had an opportunity offered to us to meet with the new union representatives for the firefighters local 1015. And they had some concerns asking us to consider making some changes. And two of those items in that conversation were the residency requirement and then also wages. So we visited with them, listened to what their concerns were. The mayor and Jennifer and I spoke, and Jennifer and I spoke with Chief Burnt about the issue, and we offered the union group this MOU that you see attached that changes the residency requirement. Was it 15 miles before? Yeah, it was 15 miles, which really doesn't get you very far around, out to 30 linear miles from the point that you would leave the city limits. So that means it's not by a road. You can't track it that way. You would have to just get on Google Earth or something to measure it that way. But that would get us far into Omaha and some of the other surrounding communities, Blair, Schuyler. I think if it's not in Schuyler, it's very close to Schuyler. And then of course, north and south as well. We're hoping that this will help attract a larger pool of applicants. And then in addition, we considered the request for a wage increase, mindful that the police had just finished their negotiations. We looked at both those communities. Jennifer did research for the communities that are considered in our array or our comparables. But then we also looked at what our competition is, where are we losing people to, where are they thinking that's a better gig over, at XYZ. And so what we've offered is an amount that has the very beginning firefighter that's toward the top of the comparabilities, but it puts us closer to our competition, Bennington, Papillion, some of those areas. So we offered that MOU to the union, and they did approve it at their recent meeting.
So we are, that part of it has been signed by the union group. So we are asking council to consider entering into this MOU.
Questions for staff? Okay. Any comments from the public on this?
Yes, Larry Marvin. I'm for the money, but what I have is mandated reporting. And do we have a issue with all of our employees that they are mandated reporters? If we have an issue like Mr. Martinez is bringing up, we have all these problems in different departments in city and county and state, probably federal too. But do we have anything in there that says they are mandated reporters to report malbehavior? Because if we had a policeman that was allegedly molesting his stepdaughter, and I asked people, I says, who did she tell here in Fremont? And nobody knows. And if she's being assaulted, our police department should know that, and they should be mandated reporters to take care of that problem immediately and not have the state patrol have to do it. We should take care of it right here. And that's what I want, is mandated reporting by all employees.
Any other comments from the public? Any additional comments from council? Take a motion. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make a motion on resolution 2023-265.
Councilwoman Lathrop.
Second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Item 21 is an ordinance 5658 for approval of the government salary ordinance. Again, there's a request to suspend the rules and move this to final reading. Staff report.
Good evening, Jody Sanders, City Administrator, stepping in for Jennifer McDuffie. The ordinance that you see attached is the salary ordinance. We've highlighted the areas that have changed. If you go to the last page of the ordinance, you'll see the pay structure that is identical to the one that's in the memorandum of understanding. But we also took the time to look at the kind of internal equity, how much space is between the top rated firefighter versus their next in line with a lieutenant and a captain. And so the captains are not in the union group itself, but when we made the addition to the lieutenant salary, we needed to also up the captain's salary to kind of keep that internal equity fair. So that's what we're presenting tonight. And we'd like to put this into play as soon as possible for our firefighters as we're continuing to try and recruit staff.
Questions for staff on this? Okay. Comments from the public on this item? Okay. Additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make the motion to approve ordinance 5658.
Councilman Sukram.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Now have first reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska pertaining to pay plan for officers and employees repealing ordinance number 5652 and all other ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for publication in pamphlet form and providing an effective date on first reading.
Councilman Jensen.
I'll make the motion to suspend the rules and move ordinance 5658 to the third and final reading.
Councilwoman Lathrop.
Second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Now have final reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska pertaining to pay plan for officers and employees repealing ordinance number 5652 and all of their ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for publication in pamphlet form and providing an effective date on final reading.
Cast your final vote.
The vote is 7-0, Mayor.
Take a motion to adjourn, Councilman Jensen.
Makes a motion to adjourn.
Councilman Vaughn,
I will second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. You have a good night.
Nice to meet you, Larry. I noticed, we had a little pamphlet tonight. Agenda.
Right there. Right now, you can get one right now. You know, when you come in, you got.
So kind of learning the process on everything,
Yep.
you know.
Well, welcome to town.
I've been before.
Well, welcome to your civic duty. But it's
More a matter of now having time to actually be involved.
I checked them up a month or two ago because we used to be able to come twice a month. Now we only get to go once. And censorship, we're the second house.
That's interesting, because I've been in the same issue last month when I spoke, because I didn't know, like, when you look online, it tells you when you can speak, but it doesn't say how much time you have to speak. It seemed like a lot of people were there last month, but last month you did 3 months, so then when he said, if we had 5 tonight, I was a little too thrown off guard, because I was expecting 3, so I was like.
Sometimes you're sitting in the front.
And that's.